welcome to the 222 Focal Award. Today we are honoring Paper Sun, the inspiring story of Tyrus Wong, Immigrant and Artist, written by Julie Leung and illustrated by Chris Sasaki. My name is Tina Princenthal, and I am the Senior Librarian of the Children's Literature Department here at Central Library. It is my great pleasure to work closely with Focal, Friends of Children and Literature. These volunteers, our dear friends, are fundamental to the enrichment of the Children's Literature Department. They sponsor enhanced learning at the library, including live performances and hands-on activities. They facilitate the beautification of our historic space, and they promote the genre of children's literature by celebrating and showcasing the stories and art that makes these books so meaningful to children and adults. I am so grateful for their support and positive spirit. And now I'd like to introduce the Focal President, Marilyn Robertson.
Hello, everyone. I'm Marilyn Robertson, the interim president of Focal, filling in for our sorely missed recent past president, Carolyn Gill. Focal stands for Friends of Children and Literature, as Tina said, the Friends group for the Los Angeles Public Library Children's Literature Department, currently in the capable hands of Tina Princenthal. Focal was started in 1979 as a way to support this department, which was under threat of closure. As you will see watching our video on the Focal website, which I encourage you to do, Sandy Shuckett had the idea to have our award be a puppet of the main character, and Leo Politi was the first recipient. Carol Onofrio designed them, and now Jesse Kingsley and his wife Moira Lael McDonald continue to make these fabulous puppets. By the way, the puppets are pictured in a book which you can purchase. Today we're honoring, as we do each year, a book set in California, published in the last 5 years, that exhibits excellence, artistic merit, and showcases California content. A shout out goes to the Focal Awards Committee for reviewing a host of books that met these criteria and for choosing the one that's our award book today. A thank you goes to Chairperson Kristen Pierce and to Board Liaison Michelle Marot, and to their hardworking committee, Alice Schick, Maya Peter Paul, Jasmine Jones, Basia Samuels, Elizabeth Tracton, and Marie Moreau. And now it is with great pride that I introduce our board member and panel moderator for the day, Dowie Ochoa Reyes, along with our author, Julie Leung, and illustrator Chris Sasaki, who produced this year's award-winning book, Paper Sun, the inspiring story of Tyrus Wong, Immigrant and Artist. Take it away.
Thank you. We are all holding up our book today. And before we get into this conversation, I want to encourage everyone who does not have a copy or wants another copy of the book to enter our very special book giveaway. This is our first time having a book giveaway. You can email our info@focalcentral.org email address and include your first and last name, your address, including your zip code and your email, and you can be the winner of a copy of Paper Sun, the beautiful book we are honoring today. And thank you, Julie and Chris, for being here today. I'm a little bit nervous, but very excited to get to chat with both of you. And first of all, I'd love to hear from Julie. What inspired you to write this story?
Hi, thank you guys so much for having me here today. I'm thrilled to be the recipient of this incredible award. I first learned about Tyrus Wong by reading his obituary in the New York Times. This would have been, I think, late 2016, possibly early 2017. And I remember being astounded by the fact that, you know, I grew up in Georgia and I didn't really get a lot of awareness of Asian American artists growing up. And I was amazed to find out about this man who contributed so much, who did so much for Disney animation and lived to be 100 years old. but then I didn't like really know about him until this moment. So at the time I was looking for my next original writing project. I had just finished a few work for hire, books. And so my agent, I emailed the obituary to her and I was like, I think I have my next project. So that was sort of the beginning of that process. And then it was a lot of research. It was, sending out a scary email to the Wong family, asking for permission and their blessing. And of course, they were such incredible partners, offering wonderful, wonderful anecdotes and things that, with all the research and the documentaries that I could have seen, there was a lot to Tyrus that I was able to glean from the family themselves. So yeah, it all just kind of came from just reading the Times.
That's amazing. And also, like, do you feel you have a very a special connection with the family since your conversations with them? Or what did you learn? Do you have a special story that you're interested in sharing with us?
Oh my gosh, so many. I think one of my favorite stories is it was funny because like I think when I first it's coming at a really funny time because I had just given birth to my first son when the book came out, and I always thought it was kind of funny that the book, and in fact, you might be able to pick up some of his feeling behind me, but he just turned 3, so the book came out. I think just a few weeks after I gave birth. It was like right around September, and I think the book also came out in September. And so we weren't able to do book events until a month later. So I flew out to LA in October, and I remember Kim Wong saying how much Tyrus would have loved babies, and like he was always such a big fan of children, and I think that's it was just a really, really, meaningful time for me to hear that because I was 1 month postpartum, still trying to breastfeed and trying to learn how to pump breast milk in a bathroom. And I think it was just a wonderful encouragement. It really felt like, really supported by the family. That's the first one. I'm also pregnant with my second. I don't know why, like every time we start talking about my first son, I'm already like having another boy as well. So
Hey, Tyrus is a great name, possibility. One of my favorite parts to read is the author's note, and I like looking at the pictures. And once you enter the room and win a copy of the book, you can see the pictures of his family. And so it was. I liked hearing about how you were with this family and with them and hear stories directly from them, because what a great privilege that even though the way that you learned about him was after his death, that you were still able to hear about directly from them. Chris, how did you incorporate some of his style of illustration into your illustration?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and a tough one too. I think when I first got the manuscript, my agent sent it to me, and I was pretty aware of Tyrus Wong's work, at least his contributions to the animation world. Because I also work in animation. I went to school for animation. We learned a lot about him, and we studied his work a lot. But I, to be honest, when I first got it, I was really intimidated, just because I don't draw like Tyrus, and so I know he's a very talented artist, and I didn't want to do some sort of ripoff of just like someone that's like a half version of Tyrus, and so I felt like I just felt the pressure. I wasn't sure if I was the right person. And I first said no to my agent, but then I thought about it after a while, and I actually reached out to Kim Wong, and we chatted for a bit, which is Tyrus's daughter, and she really gave me lots of confidence about. It's really telling about Tyrus's story, his immigration story, and just like him as an artist. And she gave me the confidence too of I don't think Tyrus would have wanted someone to draw and paint just like him. He would want something of more of a modern take. And so I did the best I could to kind of find some sort of hybrid of something that I would do, but also giving an homage to him and his work. And so, yeah, I think maybe it was kind of some sort of sweet spot, I guess, in the middle of Tyrus and me. Yeah.
I love hearing that you had such an impact from the family, from his family. And did you both get to work together at all before the book was published? Did you give each other pointers? How does that work?
I know, it's such we get this question a lot because I am so impressed with Chris and how he sort of took, again, at most, I think that Paper Sun is like 1,500 words, 1,800 words, but then Chris was able to breathe so much life into those words and just expand upon them. And there, it's funny because like he kind of took it in directions that like I was like definitely like hoping someone would make a big deal out of the spread, and then he totally did it. So we never got to interact one-on-one during the creative process. We worked through our editor. So I write the full manuscript and I work with the editor and Schwartz of Schwartz and Wade Books, who was the imprint of the publisher that published this book. And I finished it. We figured out which the page breaks were, and then Anne hands it off to Chris and works with him directly. But I just kind of wanted to, again, like my hope in writing this one paragraph was, one of my favorite scenes is when Tyrus is mopping the floor as a school janitor during his time in art school, and imagining that his mop is a paintbrush. I'm like, I hope the illustrator does something really, really cool with this. And lo and behold, this fantastic piece comes out, and it is stunning. I mean, there's so many stunning pieces in this picture book, but this is definitely probably in my top 3, top 5, maybe. So there's a lot of things that I think Chris, like, for however, we just like rode the same brain wavelength. Despite never having a conversation to talk about this manuscript and art process.
Yeah, I think I agree with Julie. Like the text was really rich, and you can tell she did so much research and history. And I think that was also like a little bit to me. It's almost just like we're giving like an homage to so many people, not just Tyrus, but so much, of people and their struggles coming to America and chasing their kind of dreams. And so, yeah, it was definitely like a story that needed to come out, and specifically just around that time. You just feel, I don't know, for me, it felt like a pressure, like, oh, I better do a good job here, to kind of represent all the great words that Julie did and in the community. But yeah, you really set a really good canvas for me to kind of play with, and even like the words were very visual, and I was able to kind of abstract the best I could from that.
And that was the biggest thing too. I think about, the time that I read about Tyrus, and also just the political dialogue that was in the space at the time around immigration, and also being the child of immigrants myself, like it was a very personal project, taking that on, just because I saw so much of my own family in the Wong's struggles. The Wongs came from the same province that my parents came from. Like, I think their villages are like 40 kilometers away from each other. And we all kind of, came here with a blank slate. That's sort of a common theme in Paper Sun a lot. Playing with the idea of paper, playing with the idea that like, this is how you leave your mark. And sometimes when you're immigrating to a new country, like you have to start over from scratch, but it's scary, it's dangerous, it's not always welcoming, but there's also that opportunity to leave, to like, basically write your own fate. And I think that's a common feeling amongst a lot of immigrants, is that, this is a fresh start. So there's a lot of stuff that I tried to build into this, like, quick picture book, but I think some among the meaningful elements is just how it echoes a lot of, my personal family history.
Was there another question, or?
I don't know, maybe audio cut out for Dewey.
Oh, okay.
We can just ask each other questions, Chris, if we want to do that.
I accidentally touched something I was not supposed to touch on my computer, and it did this weird thing. I'm so sorry.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
You know, I had a similar experience when I was reading it as a Mexican immigrant, and the things that we do to immigrate, right? And I didn't know anything about the uh you explain about him being in a wooden house and being I want to say trapped
Mhm.
waiting there for weeks. And I love his little face right here, just kind of looking out. I don't know what the actual wooden house filled with strangers looked like, but it does give you an idea of that feeling of solid loneliness of being in this space. Another That was another part of this, like showing the difficulties that come with immigration, and for a very young audience, and still making it a understandable for these young children, because I think I would read this book to the 5-year-olds in my class, and I
Mhm.
think they would be able to understand how difficult this was, and still relate to other aspects of it, like wanting to be an artist and preferring drawings over science. And I might want to edit that part a little bit to make uh, uh, but the this is the part that made me want to pick up some newspaper and try drawing with water.
Mhm.
How did you learn this particular story?
Oh, that one I think was either in the documentary or possibly there's a beautiful retrospective published by the Walt Disney Family Museum that had a lot of great anecdotes. It's almost like an art coffee table book. So I forget which source specifically. But I remember thinking how resourceful that was. Like if paper was so expensive, ink was so expensive, like water and newspaper can achieve the same thing so that Tyrus can practice. And yeah, what I also truly loved about that piece of the story is Tyrus's father and his commitment and supportiveness to Tyrus's art and his pursuit of art. Like I believe he also even took out a loan to make sure that Tyrus could go get through Otis Art School. And yeah, and I think the really incredible research piece too was reaching out to the Angel Island Immigration Station outside of San Francisco Bay. They are also a really great resource to just really understand the Chinese immigrant experience during the Exclusion Act. During a period was like the first federal law that banned an entire ethnic population from immigrating, with the very few exceptions. And just knowing that, like, despite all that, they still tried to come. Like they still tried to find ways. And Angel Island, as opposed to Ellis Island, wasn't really a processing center. It was very much a place to try to deter as many people from coming to the US as possible. And just, if you ever read the interviews and hear, Tyrus also has recorded interviews that Angel Island has kind of archived. His experience as like a 9-year-old, like not knowing the language, not knowing what to do. It's true. Like you can just tell in his voice, like that's like the worst time of his life, was just being separated from his father in this detainment center, essentially. And at that time, you weren't given like a date, like you were just kind of stuck there until they said, okay, it's time for you to get interviewed. And that kind of uncertainty and that kind of fear, like it's very palpable whenever you hear Tyrus's interviews on that subject. And I encourage everyone to listen to it themselves. But I think that was one of the really moving pieces of the research is, his memories of those places of that time is very crystal clear too.
I think you're muted.
I'm muted. Did you do any other kind of research as you were illustrating the book, Chris?
Yeah, for sure. Just like, yeah, I think I remember, I was already familiar with Tyrus's work, just his contributions to animation. And I did go to I do remember going to the Tyrus Wong exhibition at the Walt Disney Museum, since I do live in the Bay Area and it's really easy for me to kind of get down there. But I wasn't familiar with his work outside of animation, and seeing all the kites that he made, and even just like his contributions and making little toys for his kids, and also working in Hollywood for like other studios like live action, and seeing some of that concept art that he was doing then, and also just like his own fine art and his contributions and just like making illustrating on like scarves and plates and things like that. I was really unfamiliar with all that other work. And I think that was actually like really inspiring for me and kind of my way in, where I wanted to give some of that influence into like the design layout of the book. It might not be super present, but what I loved about what I took away from that museum was the kites. I really like all the repeating patterns that were in there, and like that caterpillar kite. And when you see so much of his personal work, there's just so much atmosphere in it. And I felt like, oh, kites and like atmosphere, there's so much like air. And I wanted to find a way of how I can kind of populate that in the book design wise. And so when you see like the characters exiting the boat onto Angel Island, you'll see a repetition of characters walking onto the island, and I kind of wanted to create that feeling of the caterpillar kite. Even like different spreads. Yeah, you'll see different spreads throughout the book of repetition and patterns repeating itself, and it was all just to give an homage to his love for the kites and some of the atmosphere that he brings into his own work. And so, yeah, I guess that was the kind of like research I took away from it, and for me trying to find my way into kind of like how I would design the book, and still giving an homage to his life and his contributions, but then also, finding like my own kind of stamp on it too. But yeah.
One of my favorite things about Chris's illustrations is sort of the visual poetry of it. Like if you notice that at times of, distress or barriers, like the sun is further away from Tyrus. Oftentimes there are physical like tree barriers and things. And then as he's getting closer to achievement, it comes closer. And so it's a beautiful, I've spent, again, like so much time like poring over these images, and Chris did such an amazing job of like bringing a visual poetry to the words as well, by just kind of like juxtaposition of characters to the sun, and when it's far and when it's close.
Yeah, it's definitely like, I mean, it's not like the ordinary manuscript that you get, I'd say, or it's not like a hippo gets a toothache kind of book. It's like you're telling this family and Tyrus's story, immigrating, from his home to a new home, and it probably wasn't pleasant. And so it's like finding ways where you could still engage like a child, into the book and the words and the illustrations, and it's like finding ways you can kind of connect with that kind of audience, and color and design. And I think you said it too, where you like that page of him on Angel Island where it's really isolated. But yeah, I would do research to see what that would kind of looked and felt like, but trying to remember our audience. And sometimes I feel like less is more, and and how you can have a limited color palette, or make things feel isolated with just very and it's very Tyrus, where you can.
I was about to say that's very much Tyrus's way.
You can, go ahead.
No, that's exactly. And I also wanted to call out your Bambi call references too, because there's this one spread. This was kind of when I first saw it, I was like, oh no, I'm gonna cry. But this is sort of essentially a callback to the scene in Bambi with the father, right? Kind of standing in the distance. I thought that was beautiful. And it's also such a strong moment where it was, Tyrus kind of seizing his opportunity for the first time, like remembering his own loss of his own parental figures, and then trying to like infuse that into this film, and his opportunity to kind of drive the art direction of this Disney film.
It's very Disney too, his story, like moving away with his father and missing his mother. It's a very Disney storyline. I was really appalled by the idea that he would get fired and not given enough credit for his illustrations. But, isn't that how life is sometimes?
Yeah, and the Disney Family Museum has, again, like, he's now a Disney legend and sort of reinstated and kind of really done a lot to try to re-spotlight his contributions. But yeah, as a sign of the times, it was, there weren't a lot of artists of color at that period, and it was very easy to dismiss Tyrus as, oh, he just painted some backgrounds, when really, like, his art direction informed every piece of that movie. Like, Walt essentially instructed the rest of the animators to follow in his footsteps. The backgrounds were, just groundbreaking. Like, you just very much tell the difference between the pre-Bambi and post-Bambi films, and that, like, Tyrus's less is more approach became the best way to do the backgrounds, and then the music too kind of like followed along with his art direction. So yeah, it's really great. I just like rewatched it recently, and I had to fast forward through some of the more traumatic parts for my 3-year-old. But it's truly a work of art. Like, and you can see the Eastern influences very strongly. So much of Tyrus was inspired by the Song Dynasty watercolors, where very few lines just to like hint at the sense of a mist and a mountain. And he really brought that forward to his work on Bambi and other pieces that he's done as well.
And now that I know that you didn't work together at all, what did you say to each other when you finally met in real life?
We were at a noodle shop, I think, was the first time.
Yeah, it's so interesting. We met right before, I think it was like hours before our first book tour event in LA. And I met Kim too in person for the first time as well, Tyrus's daughter, and we all sat. And we got noodles, I think.
No, gosh, I was such immediate, like, literally having given birth like a month ago. I feel like my brain was still a fog at that point. But I think it felt really comfortable. Like, as opposed to sort of meeting a stranger for the first time. Like, at this point, I'd like studied every single like Instagram post that Chris had ever posted, like, since we announced our collaboration. And then like the art just like stood out so well. And I think our first event was actually at an art gallery where just you had some of your prints for sale. And it's but yeah, it felt, there was definitely a kinship, especially with Kim there as well, like having corresponded over the phone a lot. Like, it didn't feel strange at all to meet for the first time.
Yeah, it was really great. I'm glad we, like, our first event together, we got to do it together. And honestly, I didn't really know how well it was going to be received. It's just not one of those stories that's normally been told. I'm really happy it's out there, but I really felt the love of like all the different events we did that weekend. And we ended it in Chinatown in LA, and actually next to a mural that Tyrus, painted. And it was just, it was really special. And I think I'll always remember that. And somehow I think it's like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's like I definitely found more of an Asian pride that weekend that I didn't know like I had. Seeing the audiences that came out and thanking us for making the book, it just really was, it was special. Yeah,
and also, I grew up on the East Coast my entire life, going out west and sort of seeing the community that, Tyrus is well known in certain circles, like, and I just came back with such an energy. I was like, oh, like, I need to talk to the Museum of Chinese in America in New York City and see if, I can do more events there. Because I think there is a little bit of a separation between the coasts and like the awareness of stuff. I think especially because Disney is such a, so West Coast based with all this animation. It felt real, like it was so awesome, especially I think the event we did at that library, the Huntington Library, Chris, where it was, I think we signed 200 books. There were so many people. And I was like, oh man, like there are a lot of people who know Tyrus. It was just me over here in New York that was like, ooh, like people should know. But again, I am so happy that I was able to do this and able to write a picture book about Tyrus, because I think my biggest mission as a writer these days is to try to find like the little known stories that deserve a picture book. Like there's so many story, and like, no offense to founding fathers or George Washington or anything like that, but like they've got a lot of, like, they're well known, they know, like, people know what they've done and their contributions to this country, but there's a lot more out there that do not get the same sort of level of treatment. And so Tyrus being my first, I'm kind of hooked now to like always kind of like find these Asian American voices and kind of write about them.
Yeah, I 100% agree with Julie. Yeah, after that event and just like walking away from that feeling, I remember calling my agent and telling her like, these are the kind of stories I want to tell from now on, as like find the manuscripts of like Asian representation, and just like I didn't have those books growing up, and I wish I did, seeing the kind of heroes that we just don't know about. And so I think it was just a really special book for me, and it will always kind of like have a special place in my heart for me.
Yeah, I think it was both our first picture books, right, Chris?
Mm-hmm.
It was your first picture book and my first picture book, right?
No, I had one.
This one's my first.
Yeah.
And what are you working on now?
Ooh, Chris, do you want to go first?
Oh, you go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so I've got a few things. Do I have any examples? Okay, yes, I do. Okay. Sorry, proofs just came in. So this is my next picture book coming out in August, and it's called The Truth About Dragons. It's an homage to my toddler, but because he's being raised in sort of a blended culture, I often think about like, oh, what pieces of my heritage and what pieces of my husband's heritage will he sort of need to know, and this, the struggles you might have as someone with a mixed identity or a blended identity. So this is sort of like a little fairy tale about a little boy who's trying to figure out what the truth about dragons is, whether it's the Eastern or the Western version. And then, surprise, it's both. But that'll be coming out in August. And then sometime after that, I've written a picture book about I.M. Pei, the architect, probably best known for the Louvre pyramid, but also a ton of other incredible buildings as well. And that's being illustrated right now.
So cool. I recently took a break from picture books, so I don't have like a ton of. I mean, I don't know what I could say. I'm currently working on a project at Pixar, and I can't talk about it right now. But maybe in a couple years, when it comes out, I can talk about it. Yeah.
Well, I was stalking your Instagram, looking at your Instagram, and I saw you have so many beautiful drawings. So even if we don't get to see, we don't get to see what you're secretly working on, and we can't tell us about. I saw the other illustrated book written by Julia Berry of the Swim Club, which is very exciting.
Yeah, that's another book that's really special to me too. Just with my my family growing up in Hawaii, my Japanese side that immigrated from Japan to Hawaii, and it's a story about Sakamoto teaching people on the island to become like famous Olympic swimmers. And I think that's another great book, and also something I'm really proud of, to kind of show another hero that we don't really normally hear about in history books. But yeah, I think that's I'm really proud of that book too. I think it came out, I'm trying to remember when it came out, last year maybe. I'm really proud of that one too.
Okay, so we will be on the lookout for some secret, very exciting coming up, and your new book about dragons that are both coming out. But in the meantime, of course, we can continue reading this lovely book. And again, if you don't have it yet, or if you want a copy of this book, you can enter our raffle by emailing info@focalcentral.org. Ta-da! And Now, thank you so much for chatting with us. I want to introduce to you our the puppet makers, Jesse Kingsley and Moira McDonald, to present the award.
This is
Hi,
Hi, nice to meet
hi
you.
everybody. So yeah, this was a wonderful book, and I'm very honored to get to give this award to both of you. I'll just speak a little bit about it. There was a bit of a personal connection with the subject matter of this book because my mom is a watercolor artist, and she's the one who taught me how to do art when I was very, very young. And I've heard stories. I know when she was a young child, she used to sit and watch the Mickey Mouse Club, and she had a little bunny named Cotty that used to sit next to her, and she would feed popcorn to the little bunny. And so I like to imagine her maybe watching the Mickey Mouse Club and maybe seeing some Bambi and starting those artistic gears turning. So it's just incredible to read about Tyrus Wong and all the people he may have inspired and influenced, realizing his own dream, and including possibly my mom and possibly me as well. So I'm very grateful to him for that, and happy to contribute to you two telling his story. Chris, I really loved the colors you used, and I tried to incorporate some of that in this award. You had this kind of purple pink that I really, really loved. So without further ado, I will present the Focal Award for 2022 to Julie Leung and Chris Sasaki for Paper Sun, The Inspiring Story of Tyrus Wong. Here he is.
Oh my!
Wow,
That's so cool.
that's amazing.
And I also loved the scene where he was learning watercolor or doing a character calligraphy on newspaper, and Moira, my intrepid wife, actually found a period newspaper from the time and printed it out. So
Awesome. What were the materials you used? Like, how are? Yeah.
So this is what I typically do is I do a sculpt with modeling clay or monster clay, and then I do a plaster mold and I cast it in neoprene. So this is a neoprene cast. Neoprene is like a all natural rubber, and it's usually used for tool handles, but you get a really nice detailed cast. It's non-toxic and it's very durable. So the head and hands and the little feet are neoprene casts, and the body is just cloth that we patterned and sewed. And he's a little hand puppet, so you can stick.
So that his body would really be the hand of the operator going inside.
Wow.
Oh my God. This is the coolest award I probably have ever.
I'm so glad.
I'm being like genuine.
I know, like forget any plaque or medal. Like we would never receive a puppet as an award.
I'm so glad you like it. So each of you will be getting a copy of this little guy. You'll be having your way. And then one will live at the Central Library. And,
wow. Oh my God.
Awesome.
That's so cool.
I'm very honored to have made this and give this to you. Thank you for your inspiration.
Oh my gosh, thank you both. That is
so much.
amazing. Will it sit up and will I need to put it in a box? How do I take care of it?
No, it's pretty. I think it'll be all right. It comes with like a little stand, so I'll take them off. And
awesome.
Just got a little stand. Oops, there we go. And you just put them on, and Julie, your kids, feel free. They're allowed to play with it and have fun.
Goodness.
so it can be like.
So
Oh,
cool.
he'll have to be like
So
way
cool.
less destructive than he currently is now.
Oh,
But
man.
maybe in a few years I'll
Yeah,
let him hold it.
well, if there's any mishap, Julie, Chris, just let me know and send it back and
Okay.
I'll
Yeah.
make some repairs.
So cool. Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you guys. That's amazing.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
I have a question actually, just because
Yeah.
like it kind of sparked, where it's just like one of my an illustrator I really love who's also a puppet maker, Trinka. Are you familiar with his work and his puppets at all?
No, wait, what's his name? Trinka?
Oh, Trinka. Yeah, I think it's his last name, but it has a little bit of that. It reminds me a little bit of just like in a good way, just like oh wow, like
Awesome.
it has a very nostalgic feel to it. Yeah, that's really cool.
Wonderful. I'll
Cool.
have to check that out. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
We'll look
Thank you.
them up. Yeah.
Well, great. All right. Well, I'm gonna relinquish control to Tina, I think.
I think she's popping back on screen.
We go.
Here I am, just hugging my copy of the book because I've enjoyed this conversation so much. Can you guys hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. Yeah.
Thank you so much to Julie and Chris for coming and having a conversation with us today. Congratulations on being our Focal Award winners. We really look forward to displaying that puppet in our department and using it to talk about the book to children. And I love that you guys used little Tyrus as the inspiration for the puppet, because that's going to mean so much to the children who come and visit and read this book and just love it. I really feel like we're in a renaissance of stories that need to be told. And this is one of those books that when I talk about the beautiful biographies that are coming out, this is one of the ones I'm using as the example. It's just so marvelous. Thank you again so much for our viewers for attending this program. And if you'd like to learn more about Focal or become one of our Focal friends, please visit their website. Their website is focalcentral.org. Or if you want to learn more about library events, you want to borrow a copy of Paper Sun, you want to come to children's programs, please visit our website, lapl.org. That's our initials, Los Angeles Public Library.org. And finally, do not forget about our wonderful book giveaway that is being sponsored by Focal. Please email your full name and address to info@focalcentral.org. There it is, right there, for your chance to win a fabulous copy of this book. And again, thank you so much for attending. This concludes our program, and it's just been such a pleasure. Congratulations again.
Thank you guys so much.
This made my week. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, Chelsea Mora.